What's up, Vanity babies? What's up, Vanity babies? Y'all, I'm not gonna lie. I just finished this review about 5 minutes ago and then realized that my computer didn't record anything. Ooh, so, y'all. So I'm gonna try to run through this again quickly. That took me about 30 minutes. I know I had to take me about 30 minutes. I'm gonna try and do it again because I think it's important. I gotta get this out. Said I was gonna do it, so I'm gonna do it. Okay. I needed to come through to give my honest review of this movie, The Woman King. It's been a crazy couple of days back on before I saw it Friday, over the weekend, what have you. I spent like 2 or 3 days on Twitter trying to defend my position that in order to judge something, you kind of need to see it. I get it. People didn't want to promote or make money for something they didn't approve. I get that. And I understand why people are they're upset with the creation of this movie. I mean, it's just some of it's stupid. Sorry, it's stupid. Some of the reasons people give are stupid. Some of it's justified. Um, but I'm a woman of a certain age, and I don't believe in just following someone's or other people's opinions right off the bat without attempting to form my own opinions or to try to figure out for myself what I think about something in its entirety. I'm not going to detail the whole movie, but I may drop a couple spoilers. If you don't want to hear it, you might want to drop off. Again, I'm not going to go too in depth with the movie about the plot, but I'm going to talk about it as it relates to the controversy that's going on with the movie. Okay, so first, let me give a short history regarding the people depicted in the film. Maybe not so short, but we're going to try short, okay? We're going to try. Told you I had to do this already. Now I'm doing it again. Anyway, so the movie centers around the RHOA, which is the Dahomey Women's Army. They were an all-female regiment of the Kingdom of Dahomey, which is now called Benin in Africa. This is a country in Africa. The regiment of the army was created because at the time the army suffered a lot of casualties in their male ranks while battling their nemesis, the Oyo army. So at the time, the king decided to start recruiting women and to begin training women to form their own regiment of the army. They were forced to pay tributes to the Oyo Empire, but with the emergence of their military, the Dahomey began invading and conquering other villages and eventually stopped their tributes to the Oyo. Those inhabitants of those villages were captured and sold into the slave trade. Yes, this is the backbone of the controversy involving this movie. Africans sold Africans into the trade. It was customary during that time for leaders in these countries to sell their prisoners of war, their criminals, or anybody. It could be anyone, any innocent villagers who if you opposed the ruling government, if you had conflicts with anyone, if your husband was unsatisfied with you, your parents were unsatisfied with you, you could be sold into slavery. If you had an offense against another villager, anything, it could be anything. And you were captured and sold into the slave trade. The growth of this country, the Dahomey, kind of coincided with the growth of the Atlantic slave trade. As it grew, their country grew. And they became a major supplier of humans. And the army, including the RHOA, were routinely tasked with invading foreign villages and capture human beings for the trade. They traded these poor souls for guns, for gunpowder, fabric, tobacco, alcohol. Um, and those who weren't sold into slavery became slaves in Dahomey, in the Dahomey Empire. Now, again, these were slaves for the upper echelon in the country, the kings, the ruler, the upper levels. They worked on plantations, uh, and some, unfortunately, were massacred in mass rather, during their human sacrifices. They had celebrations um, a couple times a year, I want to say, if I read it correctly, and they sacrificed their slaves um, in these celebrations, which I don't know how those two words go together, celebrate and massacre. But anyway, that's what happened. These were some bad folks, bad, nasty, a nasty group of people. It's hard to say if it was everybody or if it was just how the country was being run by leadership, but that's neither here nor there. It happened. They did it. And their country was undergirded by their military, which included the RHOA. So the end of this, the Dahomey Empire began when the British and the West began to add pressure to abolish the trade. The British Royal Navy set up a blockade along the coast, anti-slavery patrols, and they were trying to discourage Dahomey and other countries from being able to ship out boats of slaves from their shores. Eventually, it was the French who started war with Dahomey, and they basically tore it down, brought it apart, tore it apart, and it was annexed into French West Africa. I want to say they later regained their independence, and the country is now called Benin. So the controversy surrounding this movie is revolving around the RHOA. Again, we know the movie is about these women warriors who participated in horrific behavior, and people don't know how they could be uplifted into roles that allow them to be looked at as heroes. I agree and I disagree. Um, I agree. They did what they did. They should not necessarily be uplifted into positive into a positive light. Um, the Dahomey committed appalling acts against humanity. They did. I believe every single. Do I believe that every single member in this country, as I said before, agreed with what was happening? My gut and my humanity say no. Um, it's just that not there are only certain people in control who truly profited from what was happening. And those people had incentive to keep it going, whereas you had another level of people who may have wanted to see it end. Definitely, I would want to see it end if I see my cousins and my uncles and whoever being sold off into trade, but that's just my way of thinking. Don't get it twisted. I have no illusions about who these people were and what they did. Um, the truth is, all of the major empires in Africa, all of the countries, were involved in the slave in some capacity. Could I say in the trade? Jeez, this way. It's a fact. It's history. Um, I learned about this in my early 20s rather. And it kind of blew my mind that these leaders would sell their own people into slavery. Um, I remember watching Roots and watching the whites, these white colonizers coming onto the shores and snatching people, but that's not how it happened. Um, History tells us that the Portuguese tried that, but they were thwarted. They did not have the might of Africa to fight against Africa, rather. to just come in and take people freely. No, it took partnership with leadership, with kings and, whoever, to take their people and sell them off. But yeah, every country in Africa participated in the trade. One of the other ideas I see on Twitter and online about why people should boycott the movie is that white people made it. White people wrote this movie and they're going to be rich from it. We're not going to support it. And I hate to break this to you. White people profit from movies, period. Even when you're talking about somebody like, say, Tyler Perry or Spike Lee, who make their independent films, or anyone making independent films, you go through distribution through some of these larger companies that are owned by white folks. So somewhere down the line, somewhere in between, white folks are making money. I can't sit and worry about whether or not I'm going to support a movie, a Black movie, depending on whether a white person's going to make money. If that's the case, I won't see nothing. Steven Spielberg made how much off of The Color Purple? I love that movie. I watch it every time it's on. But that's just me. I come from an era where I didn't necessarily always see a lot of people who look like me on film, on screen, on TV shows. We have one or two here or there, or you have movies, and it's gotten somewhat better, but that's because our people are actually out there making the movies. So when I see a Black director directing this movie, I really want to support it, although I know that it's touchy, the subject matter. But knowing that on some level, white folks are going to make money. They're the majority. I mean, we can't stop it. Yes, we can support those things we deem that are more deserving of our dollars. But anyway, I don't want to ramble. I want to go ahead and get through this. But anyway, they're going to profit one way or on another. I want to move on to the movie. So, knowing about the history, I just went through the whole history. I have known this history. It didn't deter me to see the movie for one main reason. I wanted to see how the movie would account for the actual history of this group, and if they would keep it 100, or if they kept it 50, they kept it 25 or 75. I wanted to have, I wanted to see where it fell. And I'm open to having conversations about the subject, good or bad. I think it's great that people are having conversations about this. Just don't insult me. Don't get on Twitter calling me a dummy. This couple tried it, and what you get, your mammy. That's going to be the response coming from me. I was raised in the 70s. Your mammy. Your mammy's a dummy. Please don't go there with me. Anyway, my total impression of the film. I know it's petty. I don't care. You can call me a name. I can call you one too. Anyway, the impression of the film was that, yes, they indeed attempted to soften the impression of how much involvement that the homie and the RHOA had in the trade. Full stop. However, I recognize it's a fictional story set in a real place during a real time period. They touched on those things people are upset about, but they didn't go in depth with it. Meaning, the movie was about these women and their relationships, and how they work with one another. So they weren't going to focus but so much on the trade, or on their war with other villages, or how they were capturing people, or what they were doing. The whole what am I looking for? Their whole community way of doing things, their whole culture. They weren't going to focus on all of those things because they wanted to focus on talking about these women. Some things rang true, some things didn't. I remember watching at the beginning of the movie, they invaded a village that had invaded one of their villages to rescue some of their people. Um, and they pretty much killed all the men, not all of them, most of the men. Um, and they recaptured their tribes people, and captured the women who were left. And they brought those women to their uh, where the army is in the palace, and they gave them the option of staying with the RHOA or leaving. Now, I seriously doubt that would have happened in real life, that they would have just been let go. They would have been sold. You don't want to be here? We got you. We got a boat ride for you. And history shows, that although there was some women who joined the RHOA on their own, many were recruited by force. Um, and this was women who were deemed to have behavior problems. If you weren't pretty enough or you couldn't bear children, um, you could be forced into service. And if you didn't live up to the standards, you were killed or sold. Um, that's the harsh reality of that. The movie touches on trade and their ongoing conflicts with the oil, but it primarily focuses on a couple of main characters, maybe 4 or 5 characters. The main character is Naui, who is sent to the RHOA because she would not agree to marry an older man. Um, General Naniska is Angela Viola Davis. I'm about to say Angela Jolie. Viola Davis's character, and she's dealing with internal conflict that involves the trade. She's asking her king to kind of move away from the trade, and they can focus more on their other imports, and that they have palm oil and blah blah blah. Again, it's a story. It's a made up story. You get some great action scenes, some fighting scenes. But again, there is a softening of what's really going on in the world, because they focus on the lives of these individual characters. But frankly, that's what I expected to happen. It's a movie. Um, it's supposed to be entertaining. They don't want to focus on what really happened in the slave trade. We can advocate for an actual movie to talk about those things. But this story was about these individual women and what was going on with them. I mean, it's fiction. It was fantasy. And although it does paint the RHOA in a good light, um, I know what happened in real life. I do wish they would have shown more of the harsher mindsets that you have to have in order to do these things with some of the characters. Um, but honestly, I couldn't see them doing it because they're wanting to they want the film to ultimately be positive. Um, Now, we all have the responsibility and an opportunity to advance the true story in the midst of what the film tells. Um, I recognize that you can't make everyone happy. Not my job, not my monkey, not my circus. I don't want to make you happy. I'm not trying to make you happy. I'm trying to live my life, take care of my family, and the people in my circle around me, support them. Um, I'm just giving my opinion, my thoughts about the film, and the history of the people depicted in the film. And y'all, can y'all please leave Lupita out of this? Lupita turned down the role because of an experience she had filming a documentary about these women. People saying she turned it down because she saw that they were horrible and blah, 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 blah. She couldn't do that. She also said in that documentary, if you watch it, I watched it, it was actually very good. She says that these women were both oppressors and victims. She saw both sides of the coin. and how, and I said this in one post, that these women really didn't have the power to change the narrative, to change in what was going on in their country. They didn't. The king had that power. Um, and they could only push so much. You can imagine you can only push so much to change what the status quo is. But anyway, that's it. I ain't got no more. I'm ready to go. I've been sitting here talking to y'all. This is the second time I've told this doggone story. Second time I've told this doggone story. Ready to go home. Okay? And I'm missing football. It's not my team, but I'm missing football. And no, I'm going to do a video about that defense with my Ravens and how they didn't show up yesterday. Okay? We're going to talk about that later. But anyway, Auntie loves you. Ooh, and my voice is hoarse. So I'm going to stop trying to sing. Auntie loves you, and I'll see you soon.